Oak Island. A quiet, wind-swept stretch of land just off the coast of Nova Scotia, Canada. Barely a mile long, this island has been the stage for one of the most enduring mysteries in human history. For more than 200 years, treasure hunters, historians, and dreamers have torn apart its soil, sunk shafts into its earth, and risked, and often lost, their lives in pursuit of a single question: what lies buried beneath Oak Island? The legend began in the late 1700s, when a teenager named Daniel McGinnis noticed strange depressions in the ground beneath an old oak tree. Digging with his friends, he uncovered layers of wooden platforms, one every 10 feet, as if someone had deliberately constructed a shaft. The further they went, the stranger it became. Coconut fibers from the Caribbean were found in the soil. Water tunnels seemed to flood the pit whenever they reached a certain depth. It was as if the ground itself was defending something. From that moment forward, the money pit became the focus of centuries of exploration, obsession, and tragedy. Over the decades, countless theories have emerged. Some claim it's the final resting place of the Knights Templar's treasure, sacred relics smuggled across the Atlantic. Others argue it hides Shakespeare's lost manuscripts, pirate loot, or even artifacts that could rewrite the history of the Americas. Yet for all the theories, the truth has remained hidden. Millions of dollars have been spent, lives have been lost, and still, Oak Island has refused to yield its secrets. But then came the Lagina brothers, Rick and Marty. Two men from Michigan who grew up reading about Oak Island in Reader's Digest. Where others saw a bottomless pit of failure, Rick saw destiny. From the moment he first set foot on the island, his conviction was unshakable: something was there, and he was meant to find it. For years, audiences around the world followed their journey through the curse of Oak Island. Week after week, season after season, Rick and his team drilled holes, uncovered artifacts, and pieced together fragments of a puzzle older than anyone could imagine. They found medieval coins, fragments of parchment, mysterious carvings, even evidence of underground tunnels that seemed far too advanced for the 1600s. Every discovery raised more questions than answers. And yet, through it all, the island resisted. Dig shafts collapsed. Water flooded tunnels. Machines broke down. Skeptics mocked. Some whispered of a curse, that 7 men must die before the treasure could be found. 6 had already perished in the centuries-long search. Would Rick or his team be the 7th? By 2025, after nearly a decade of exploration, even Rick began to wonder if Oak Island would ever give up its greatest secret. But then, in June of that year, something happened that changed everything. It started with a sonar scan. The team had been exploring the southern edge of the Money Pit, drilling exploratory boreholes into the earth. Most scans revealed the usual chaos: voids where old tunnels had collapsed, or false signals from iron deposits. But one scan was different. It showed something impossible. On the monitor appeared a rectangular shape, precise, symmetrical, deliberate. 12 meters below the surface lay what looked like a doorway. Rick stared at the image for a long time. He'd seen voids before, yes. He'd seen strange shapes that could be explained away as natural formations. But this was too perfect. A 7-foot-tall slab with clean edges and even proportions. And right at the center, a faint arch-like curve. "This isn't natural," he murmured. "Somebody built this." The crew gathered around, exchanging nervous glances. Could this finally be it? A man-made structure guarding what everyone had been searching for. Marty was cautious, warning against jumping to conclusions. "We've been fooled before," he reminded them. But deep down, even he knew this was different. The weeks that followed were tense. Engineers, archaeologists, and historians were brought in. AI-assisted imaging analyzed the anomaly, confirming it was composed of dressed stone, not random rock. Historical records were scoured. One 17th-century map of Oak Island, discovered decades earlier, mentioned hidden vaults beneath the ground. Indigenous Mi'kmaq legends spoke of sacred chambers sealed to protect, gifts of the sky. And then there was the strangest piece of all, a document from the Vatican, describing how the Knights Templar may have transported relics across the ocean to hide them in a fortified island of the West. All signs pointed to Oak Island. All signs pointed to this door. Excavation began cautiously. The risk of collapse was immense, and flooding could ruin everything. Day after day, the team dug, pumping out water, reinforcing shafts with steel. It was grueling work, but slowly, painfully, they reached it. When Rick first laid eyes on the stone door, he felt his knees weaken. There it was, 7 feet tall, smooth on the surface, and carved with markings so faint they were barely visible. Symbols of circles and triangles. A cross etched at the center. Beneath it, lines of script no one could immediately identify. The air in the chamber felt heavy, ancient, almost sacred. Rick ran his hand across the carvings, his voice trembling. This is it. This is what we've been waiting for. But the door refused to open. Chisels bounced off. Drills dulled within minutes. Even advanced cutting tools failed. The stone had been designed not just as a barrier but as a fortress. And then came the strangest discovery of all. At the base of the door, almost invisible beneath centuries of dirt, one of the crew noticed a small indentation. At first it looked like erosion, but when cleaned, its shape was undeniable, a keyhole. Everyone froze. It wasn't just a door. It was a locked door. The implications were staggering. This wasn't some random shaft. This was deliberate, intentional architecture. Whoever built it had locked it for a reason. But where was the key? For weeks, they searched. Old maps, recovered artifacts, legends. Until one night, Rick had a revelation. Years earlier, a strange triangular stone had been found at a depth of 90 feet. Known as the 90-foot stone, it bore cryptic symbols that no one had fully deciphered. Scholars had debated its meaning for centuries. But what if it wasn't a message? What if it was a key? The idea sounded insane. And yet, when Rick compared the markings on the stone with those on the door, the similarities were undeniable. On a quiet morning, with cameras rolling and the entire team holding their breath, Rick placed the triangular stone into the indentation. For a moment, nothing happened. Silence. Dust drifted from the ceiling. And then, a sound. A deep, grinding rumble shook the chamber. Ancient gears hidden behind the walls began to turn. Dust poured from the seams of the stone as it slowly shifted inward. The door was opening. The crew stumbled back, shielding their faces as centuries of air escaped with a hiss. The sound was deafening, like a vault being unsealed for the first time in half a millennium. And then, before their eyes, a passage revealed itself. Flashlights pierced the darkness, beams dancing across stone walls and objects. Boxes, chests, crates stacked against the sides of the chamber. Coins glittering in the dust. Jewels winking like stars. Scrolls and manuscripts bound in ancient leather. Gasps filled the room. This wasn't a myth. This wasn't just folklore. The treasure of Oak Island was real. But the greatest shock was yet to come. At the center of the chamber stood a massive chest, bound in iron and sealed with wax. It took 4 men to pry it open. When they finally did, they recoiled in awe. Inside lay relics of staggering importance. Golden crosses, jewel-encrusted chalices, and at the heart of it, a reliquary, a golden vessel containing a fragment of bone encased in crystal. Etched into the reliquary, in Latin, were the words, "Relic of the True Cross." Silence fell. No one spoke. If this was genuine, it wasn't just treasure. It was one of the most sacred objects in Christian history. Rick's voice broke the silence, barely a whisper. "We've found it, but why was it hidden?" In that moment, the excitement turned to dread. Because if such relics had been deliberately buried on Oak Island, what else was hidden here? And why had it been locked away, protected by traps, by secrecy, by legend? The vault was worth $90 million in treasure. But the truth it held, that was priceless. And possibly dangerous. Rick stared into the chamber, his flashlight flickering on ancient manuscripts bound in strange languages. He felt a chill crawl up his spine. For centuries, Oak Island had guarded its secrets. And now, those secrets were finally awake. The chamber had been sealed for centuries. Now, its silence was broken. Dust hung in the air like ghostly mist, glittering under the crew's flashlights. The weight of history pressed down on everyone present, each man knowing that this was more than just another find. This was the discovery that had haunted Oak Island for 200 years. The treasure glittered in the darkness. Coins from Spain, Portugal, and even Arabia. Ornate goblets encrusted with emeralds. Golden crosses wrapped in faded cloth. But none of it compared to the manuscript stacked neatly in the far corner. Rick approached slowly, his hands trembling. The parchments were fragile, bound in cracked leather and sealed with strange wax insignias. Symbols unfamiliar to anyone on the team. Some appeared to be Templar crosses. Others were far more obscure. Geometric patterns, suns, crescent moons, even something resembling the all-seeing eye. "Careful," whispered Marty, holding Rick back. "If those fall apart, we may never know what they contain." Experts were called in immediately. Conservators worked painstakingly, unsealing one manuscript under controlled conditions. As it opened, the faded ink revealed a language, but not one any of the archaeologists could instantly identify. It wasn't Latin, nor Greek, nor Old French. It was something far older, and stranger. Days passed as linguists attempted to decode the writing. Slowly, terrifyingly, the meaning began to emerge. The documents weren't treasure maps, nor records of trade. They were warnings. One text, once translated, read, "These relics are not to be worshipped. They are to be hidden. For what they carry is not salvation, but destruction." The crew stared in disbelief. Destruction. What could that mean? As more manuscripts were decoded, a story began to emerge, a story stretching back to the fall of the Knights Templar in the early 1300s. After the order was betrayed by the French king and hunted by the Vatican, some of its leaders had fled with their greatest treasures. But according to these writings, the treasure wasn't simply gold or relics. It was knowledge. Forbidden knowledge. Rick held one of the manuscripts in his gloved hands. The text described a doorway to the stars, a passage into another realm. Another spoke of the stone of fire, capable of destroying entire armies. Another described the Book of Resurrection, a manuscript that contained instructions for reviving the dead. These weren't just relics. They were secrets humanity was never meant to possess. And then came the most chilling discovery. Hidden beneath a stack of chests was a smaller vault, locked with iron bands. Unlike the others, this one bore no cross, no markings of faith. Instead, it was carved with a single inscription in Latin. Clavis Ultima. The final key. When the vault was finally opened, the crew recoiled. Inside lay a strange metallic device, a cube of polished stone fused with metal, unlike anything the 14th century could have produced. Its surface shimmered with a faint iridescence, as though it were not of this world. The manuscripts nearby explained its purpose. The cube was a keystone. A mechanism designed to unlock something far greater, something buried deeper still beneath Oak Island. A second chamber. Rick's heart raced. For years, Oak Island had been about the money pit, about treasure. But this hinted at something far more terrifying. Not just wealth, but ancient technology. Technology that the Templars had hidden, perhaps stolen from civilizations long forgotten. "Rick," Marty said quietly, "maybe this isn't treasure we're meant to find." But Rick couldn't turn back. He felt it, destiny pulling him forward. Weeks of investigation followed. Advanced imaging beneath the first chamber revealed another void, even larger, lying nearly 100 feet below. This second vault was sealed by layers of stone and reinforced tunnels, far more complex than the first. The keystone cube seemed to resonate when brought near, emitting faint vibrations as though reacting to the deeper chamber. And then came the accident. While drilling near the secondary void, one of the boreholes struck an air pocket. A hiss filled the shaft, followed by a gush of noxious gas. 2 workers collapsed instantly, dragged out barely alive. Whatever was trapped below wasn't just treasure, it was dangerous. Historians studying the manuscripts confirmed the warnings. They spoke of a curse, yes, but not the folkloric 7 deaths. Instead, they described a sealed force, something ancient and unstoppable, hidden to protect humanity itself. One chilling passage read, "Should the vault be opened, the island shall bleed. The waters shall rise, and the world shall face the fire of the ancients." For the first time in his life, Rick Lagina hesitated. For years he had pursued this dream relentlessly. But now, staring at the strange device in his hands, he felt doubt. Were they about to unleash something the world was never meant to see? The media frenzy only made things worse. Word of the discovery leaked to the press. Rumors of a $90 million find swept across the globe. Treasure hunters, conspiracy theorists, even representatives from foreign governments began to circle like vultures. Everyone wanted a piece of Oak Island. Everyone wanted what Rick had found. Security around the island was tightened. Helicopters buzzed overhead. Anonymous warnings arrived by email and phone, telling Rick to stop digging. One even claimed, "The Vatican knows what you found. Leave it buried." But the Laginas pressed on. With the keystone cube in hand, they prepared to breach the second vault. Engineers built reinforced tunnels, Archaeologists mapped every inch, while Rick spent sleepless nights poring over the manuscripts. And in those pages, he found something that chilled him to his core. A prophecy. It spoke of a time when, the door beneath the earth shall open, and the keepers shall rise once more. The text claimed that the hidden vault beneath Oak Island was not just a tomb or a treasury. It was a prison. Rick read the final lines aloud to his brother. Those who open the final door shall inherit the wrath of heaven itself. They shall be judged as thieves of the divine. The room fell silent. Was the Oak Island mystery not about treasure at all, but about containment? Still, the decision was made. They would continue. Cameras, experts, and heavy machinery were brought in. With each passing day, the shaft grew deeper, the air heavier, the danger more palpable. And then, late one evening, as the Keystone Cube was lowered into a carved indentation in the tunnel wall, the ground shook. The rumbling was deafening. Dust rained down from the ceiling. The island itself seemed to tremble. And slowly, agonizingly, a second door revealed itself, this one far larger, carved with symbols that no human alive had ever seen. The door was alive. It pulsed faintly with a light that shimmered like stars trapped in stone. The men stared in silence. Fear, awe, and wonder mingled in their eyes. Rick stepped forward, the cube in his hands. He knew what came next. And yet, as he approached the glowing door, he couldn't escape the thought echoing in his mind. What if opening this doesn't just change Oak Island? What if it changes the world? The second door stood like a sentinel in the dark, its faint glow casting ghostly light across the cavern. Unlike the crude stone passages behind them, this was too perfect, too deliberate, crafted by hands that had wielded knowledge far beyond their time. The team stood in silence, breath fogging in the damp underground air, listening to the eerie hum that seemed to emanate from the structure itself. It was not stone alone, it was something else, something alive. Rick Lagina's fingers trembled as he held the Keystone Cube, its vibration pulsing stronger with every step toward the door. His heart raced, not with fear alone but with the crushing weight of centuries pressing down on this moment. Legends had whispered of Oak Island's money pit, of gold, of manuscripts, of Templar treasure. But standing here now, Rick knew those were half-truths at best. This was not about riches. This was about something ancient, something cosmic, something meant to stay buried forever. He pressed the cube into the hollow at the center of the door. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the air around them seemed to thicken, vibrating with unseen energy. The cube dissolved into the stone as if consumed, and glowing sigils spread outward in concentric patterns across the door's surface. The chamber shook violently. Dust cascaded from the ceiling. Men stumbled, shouting, clutching their hard hats. A groaning sound, like the grinding of mountains, filled their ears as the door began to move, backward, impossibly smooth, revealing a yawning blackness. The darkness that spilled out was unnatural. Cold, ancient. It swept through the tunnel like a living wind, raising goosebumps across every arm, filling lungs with a chill that made the heart stutter. One by one, flashlights cut into the abyss. The beams revealed a cavern of impossible scale. This was not a chamber dug by man. It was a cathedral carved by forces that defied explanation, its walls smooth as glass, black as obsidian, inscribed with markings that no scholar alive could decipher. At its center rose an altar, colossal and deliberate, its surface etched with the same geometric patterns from the manuscripts. Draped across it was a decayed cloth, brittle with age. Beneath the cloth was something. Rick stepped forward, every instinct screaming to turn back. Yet something pulled him closer, as though unseen hands guided his steps. The others called after him, voices tight with fear, but he ignored them. Slowly, he reached out and peeled the ancient fabric away. What lay beneath was no treasure chest, no mound of gold, no relic of earthly power. It was a sphere, a crystalline orb the size of a human skull, glowing faintly with inner light. Its surface shimmered like frozen fire, constantly shifting with patterns that resembled stars, galaxies, universes collapsing and reforming in endless cycles. Rick's breath caught in his throat. This was not made by men. This was something else. As he touched it, a hum spread through the chamber. The orb pulsed once, twice, and then flared, flooding the cavern with blinding light. In an instant, the world shattered. Visions filled their minds. They saw great cities of stone and light, rising and falling in seas of fire. They saw wars fought with weapons of unimaginable power, weapons that tore the sky apart, that melted oceans, that cracked continents in two. They saw beings, tall, robed, with faces partly human and partly alien, guiding armies, teaching kings, whispering secrets. And then they saw the handoff, the beings passing the orb to men clad in armor marked with crosses, the Knights Templar. The team staggered, clutching their heads, some crying out in agony as the visions clawed into their minds. Rick fell to his knees, gasping. He saw the truth. Oak Island was never a vault for gold or jewels. It was a prison for this weapon, this knowledge, this curse. The Templars had not been treasure hoarders. They had been guardians, jailers of something the world was never meant to see. But the orb wasn't done. The visions shifted, showing glimpses of the future. Rick saw oceans swallowing cities, fires consuming nations, skies blackened by storms that blotted out the sun. He saw wars, not with bullets, but with forces that twisted reality itself, annihilating millions in seconds. And at the center of it all, always present, always glowing, was the sphere. The chamber trembled as if the orb's awakening disturbed the very earth around it. The walls cracked, the ceiling groaned, dust rained down like ash. The great stone door slammed shut behind them with a sound like the final toll of a bell. They were trapped. Fear erupted among the crew. Men shouted, clawed at the sealed door, tried to find another way out. But Rick couldn't move. The orb had him. Its light filled his eyes, its whispers filled his mind. It promised knowledge, power, destiny. It showed him how to harness energy from the very fabric of existence, how to bend reality to his will. Marty grabbed his brother's shoulders, shaking him. Rick, snap out of it. It's controlling you. Rick blinked, torn between the familiar voice and the seductive pull of the orb. His hands trembled inches from the glowing surface. One touch more and it could be his. Everything. All the secrets of the universe. But then he remembered the visions, the destruction, the fire, the screaming faces of billions undone by their own hubris. He tore his hands away, gasping, shaking like a man awakened from a nightmare. "We have to stop it," he whispered. The orb pulsed, as if angry. The cavern's hum rose to a deafening roar. The floor split open, jagged fissures spreading like veins of fire. Water poured in from the cracks, icy and relentless. The chamber was collapsing. "Destroy it," Marty shouted. Rick grabbed a nearby pickaxe, raising it high. The orb flared blindingly, projecting visions of paradise, of peace, of a world where hunger and war no longer existed. It pleaded without words, seducing his mind one last time. Rick hesitated, sweat dripping down his face, torn between salvation and doom. Then, with a scream that was equal parts rage and sorrow, he brought the pickaxe down. The blow cracked the orb. Light exploded outward, searing the chamber, blasting them off their feet. The orb shrieked, a sound that was not a sound but a tearing of the soul, and shattered into 1,000 shards. The collapse accelerated. Stones rained from above, water surged higher, threatening to drown them all. In the chaos, the crew clawed their way toward a fissure opening along the chamber wall. One by one, coughing, bleeding, terrified, they scrambled through the crack, water surging at their heels. Rick was the last, dragging himself out as the entire chamber caved in behind him. The earth roared like thunder, sealing the orb's prison forever. They emerged in the night air of Oak Island, soaked, broken, but alive. The ground trembled beneath them, and then stilled. The island was silent again. The team lay in the dirt, staring up at the stars. Not one of them spoke. They knew what they had seen, what they had unleashed, what they had destroyed. And they knew no one would ever believe them. Rick sat up slowly, staring back at the pit. "It's over," he whispered, though a hollow feeling told him it wasn't. The visions had shown him too much. The orb had been destroyed, but its memory lingered in him. He could still hear its whispers, faint and distant, like an echo carried on the wind. And in the quiet night, as the moonlight bathed Oak Island, Rick wondered, had they really destroyed it, or had they only set something free?